assume?
I do.
So we have done 4 interviews this morning. Trinity Southwick withdrew from consideration.
Okay.
So there are now 8 candidates. And the commissioners are the decision makers on this. We got Shanghai into helping out. And so that's what we're doing. And we put together a list of questions amongst us last week. And so I got Shanghai into asking them. But I'll ask them and then I'll jump.
Attorney?
Yeah. I'll jump around and then hopefully they'll jump in and rescue me at some point. But we've got 45 minutes, so you can talk as much or as little as you want.
Okay.
And then there's a forum next Monday night, I'm sure you know about that. And then sometime between now and next Tuesday morning, none of us have worked this out, how we're gonna give them recommendations, but we'll give the commissioners recommendations and then they'll be up to them to do it.
And how do you impound the jury? Can you start to scratch them off to get down to one?
I don't know, like we said, I haven't talked to these guys about it, whether we all just do our own or whether we get together as a group and talk about it. If we do, we probably have to do it publicly, would be my guess. So, I don't know. So. But in the meantime, let's start with you. We got your packet. And so we just have a bunch of questions. So the first one is, and I already, to Laura's consternation, I've been bouncing around all day. I haven't been at work yet. So let's start with why you want to be a county commissioner. What excites you about this opportunity?
I want to do it because I love the county. Now, I've demonstrated that since I've come here by being involved in many things in the county. But I have gone back and forth about this in the last month and a half about whether I should run or not. But it comes down to I want to give back in this county. And I think I have the experience, and I'll come back to that about governance. But what I really want to be able to do is to heal the relationship between Commissioner Obert and Commissioner Slifka. And I have been to, if I've attended maybe a dozen meetings in the last year in public forums, and I want to be specific since I said that to their faces, I want to tell them more about that. Specifically, when I see Commissioner Obert, she's organized in what I would call a driver business. In other words, she's getting things done, but at the same time, I think some of the community feels that she's not fully transparent because we're moving along at such a pace. So I think I could help her with transparency. For example, I sat in the meeting and some of the citizens were concerned that they didn't have a hard copy of the county handbook. Well, I think I'm an organized person as well, so I think I could help her be more organized to be more transparent. Now, at the same time, I think Commissioner Slifka is a person who likes to think deeply about things. I don't know that for sure, but at the same time, I don't think, I've asked you this so I can say it to your face, I'm not sure you're a good computer user, and so much of what we do today is on the computer. And so the two things I think I would do to help with Commissioner Slifka is, one, make sure he has hard copies if I have to print them myself, to get things to him so he can, I know he's prepared, but sometimes he looks like he's not because he's looking at the minutes. So getting him the minutes, hard copies if we need to. And the other thing is anything that's going on that maybe everybody else knows about because I read the email, I'm going to call and say, hey, did you know that we're interviewing somebody? Now, I say this like I am a commissioner. I'm not selected. But did you know that this is going on? I want to make sure that you're aware of it so nobody feels like they've been left out. And between the two of you, there's no hard feelings where you're kind of poking at each other. Those are the reasons I'm running, is I think I have the ability and the background to do the everyday mundane business of the county, which probably makes up 90% of it. The 10% of it we'll maybe circle around and talk about here in a little while, but my second little plank of my platform is to heal the relationship between the two commissioners. And you know, I'm stealing from a book I'm reading right now that the top of the pyramid is results, but the bottom of the pyramid is trust, with some steps in between. Well, I need you to have a little trust in each other so we can move ahead. And so that's why I have decided that I will not only commit to try to do this, but I've committed to running for the office as well. So if I'm going to get in, I'm going to get all in.
Okay. And so that was going to be one of the questions, is are you applying for the appointment as well as running? And the answer is yes.
Yes, and I think I now have all my paperwork done. I just turned in my C1A form a minute ago.
Okay. And so that was one of the questions which you started on, and I might just ask a little bit of follow-up. Meetings often in this room have not been pleasant. It's been a 1-1 view on whatever the issue is. So with a two-person commission, you need 2 votes to do anything, including payroll, minutes, you name it. So many of those meetings have also been criticized by county employees. The members of the commission aren't happy with it. Outside observers, members of the public are saying the meetings aren't productive. They're turning too argumentative. They're turning mean-spirited, and we got to get our business done. The perception is that most people would rather not worry about the county commission, just trust it to take care of business. They start focusing when business is not getting taken care of and things are getting unpleasant. So with that as kind of a stage setting, how do you, other than what you already talked about, anything else you want to add to that? How do you participate in that, bring solutions, change the discourse?
Well, I just told you the main thing I want to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would tell you that I'm nonpartisan. Now, I know that's probably how you'd sign up for a county government anyway. I'm not sure, and I have a few questions I'll ask at the end if there's time, but I don't come with an agenda. Now, I hope you ask me about being on the hospital board, or if you don't, I will talk about it. Right. But I don't really come with an agenda about trying to change what we're doing. I mean, I guess in one respect I'll say, when I moved here, I didn't move from California. I didn't bring that along with me. And I've lived here long enough to pretty much understand the problems. And we'll talk about later in some of my experiences what I don't have. But I would tell you my main 2 planks, the number one thing is county business. And I'll give you an example about that. And again, Franklin, I look at you only because I know you a little bit and I've talked to you, and Laura, as far as signing timesheets, I've had to do that for a long, long time. I get it. And so if we can remove that little contentious piece, I'll be glad to be the one to help Laura sign the timesheets. It's okay. And we can move ahead with some of these little things. At the same time, and since you get to jump around, I get to jump around too.
Too bad, jump.
We'll talk about the things I do and can do, but one of the things I don't bring is I don't bring ag experience to this board. And if I said I did, it would be like me going out and buying a rodeo belt buckle and putting it on, like I did, right? I don't. At the same time, I suspect I know the ag people's biggest issue, and I'm going to look at Franklin because I would look to him to be the expert on that. My guess is they have a lot of land, and when it comes to property taxes, they're highly sensitive about it. So it's not like I don't understand that part of it. And, you know, commissioner's job is to represent everybody in the county, including the ag people, including the people who live in the city. So I would just tell you that for me, if I'm selected, there's things I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is go around and talk to every department so I know what they do and who they are, and say, you know, what's your biggest problem, what's your biggest need, and just show me what it is you do on a daily basis. My second thing I would do is hold some office hours. And I'm not quite sure how it's done. I had to meet with the Fergus County Commissioners in Lewistown last week, and all three of them were there having office hours. How do they do that without having some kind of conflict of interest, non-public meeting? But I think we ought to have some office hours for the community. And then the third thing, and this is circling back to the ag issue, I need to go get involved, and I'm not sure where. I know Franklin could help me, but I would guess for example, the Broadwater, Missouri ditch people, that's not the right name, that's the northern half, but the southern half of the county's got water. I mean, those have to be meetings that are attended by some of the people with lots of land in the county, so getting involved with them is something that is on my to-do list. That's probably number 3. So.
Okay. So what kind of time commitment are you able to put in as a county commissioner?
Well, it's 32 hours a week is the job description in which I intend. So the other things I'm involved with, I am, probably my first and foremost job is I am the chair of the church council at Trailhead, which that consumes a lot of weekend time and night meetings of my own, but it also puts me in touch with a large swath of the faith-based community here. My second job, and I actually do have a job that I've gone to part-time in, is with a company called McKinstry, and as part-time I'm averaging about 1 day a week. Now, if I was selected, I have to cross a bridge, and do I want to give that up or not? Now, I believe I could have other jobs while I do this job, but at the same time, this is the main job. Like I said, you're paid for 32 hours a week, that's 4 days a week, one of the reasons to have some office hours. And then my third job that I have is being the secretary-treasurer of the Townsend Health System Board, or the hospital operating board, not the district board. And that takes, and since I've been on that board, probably for me 8 hours a week. So something we'll probably have to give in my schedule. It'd probably be my McKinstry job, only because I'm tired of driving to the locations they send me, like the University of Idaho, or Glasgow, or Ekalaka, or so. I'm kind of tired of the drive with that job.
Okay.
But it's a paid job, and I intend to treat it as such.
Okay. Since you mentioned the hospital board, do you see any concern about conflict of interest being on that hospital board or being a county commissioner?
Thank you for asking that question. The short answer is no, but I want to fill in some blanks here. First off, if you're not clear about all these boards, understand that that's the operating board of the hospital. Between the commissioners and that board is the voted-in district board, which is in charge of all the money that comes from this particular government. Now, I think it's almost the opposite from being a conflict of interest, in that the hospital is the second biggest, or maybe the biggest asset in this county as far as buildings. This one is the other one. Not only is it a large asset, but it's extremely important in that it serves really all the people in the county, except at the edges that go somewhere else. And it's also one of the largest employers. So I have a lot of knowledge about what goes on over there, and so I can share that with the commissioners, and I can share it publicly for transparency. Now, specifically the conflict of interest. In this coming year, there's probably 2 things that will touch money. One of them is the intergovernmental transfer, which will come up shortly, which was approved in maybe December or November by Commissioners Obert and Gravely, and I think right now it's pending a decision from your standpoint, but that'll come up, but that vote's done, so I won't be involved in that. And the second money issue is mill levy, and the voters approved that 3 years ago. So I don't think there's anything that would come up, but if you read my application, I said, based on advice from our county attorney, if I need to recluse myself from a vote, I'll do that. But I do think the hospital is hugely beneficial to the county and hugely important, and having good communication about what's going on over there is a big deal. So thank you for asking that question.
May I just, because, you know, everybody, you hear things out and about. So if the hospital comes to the commissioners for more money, do you feel that you would be able to, do you feel like you could, if you didn't, are you definitely gonna give them the money, or are you going to, just because you're on the board? I mean, do you feel that you are more for the hospital? You know, I guess I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Let me try to help
but,
you.
okay.
I'm definitely for the hospital.
Right.
And as far as, and this goes back to the part about taxpayer money,
Mm-hmm.
so I can tell you that the hospital, when this 3-year mill levy's up,
Mhm.
will be coming back to repeat that mill levy, as it has been done in this county for a long time. I would be in support of that. I don't know where the hospital's coming anytime soon to ask for more money. The idea about being treated like you know, I want to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
part of that goes back to that ag community. I know that they have a difficult spot. If you haven't heard or seen it in the last 3 months, and that's counting the financials just coming out, the hospital has started to have, their gross revenues have exceeded their expenses. That won't always happen, but we have stabilized our financial operation and would love to not have to ask for money,
Mm-hmm.
because certainly we know there's a sensitivity about it.
Right.
But I am pro-hospital, so do know that. If that helps you any.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That, for the two of you commissioners, is there anything you want to ask me more about that? This is really important issue.
I guess I would just advise you that if you came on the county commission, I would advise you, you should probably resign from the hospital board. I think it's unavoidable that it would just place you in too many conflicts. So just something to keep that in mind.
Okay, now is it a suggestion or is it the law? And I
The
would
law-
look
the law would be, you could not vote on anything, you could not participate or vote on anything associated with the hospital. And I think that would extend to the hospital district, even to the extent of being the second on a motion for have a motion. It would be as if you weren't present. That's the law. As far as recommendation, I would say that my recommendation would be the best way to avoid arguments and fights and rumors and blah, blah, blah about conflict would be just to resign from that board and let them put somebody else in.
Thank you for that.
Just dealing with the public, I would have to second that, because I've had 3 or 4 people come in my window and make innuendos about conflicts of interest with the hospital. So, yeah, you know, you have to put yourself above all appearance of evil, and that would be the best way to do it.
Evidently, we've all heard about this. That's what we're saying, Bill.
It's not that big of a county.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But
And
concerns, and that's the only reason
I'll try to make that decision by
Yeah.
Monday night so I can state it publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because that's a great idea, to let people know your view on that.
I appreciate the input.
I would like to follow up with one of our questions, and it's along the same vein, but it's really regarding the economy of the county as a whole. There's really limited opportunities for our high school grads to stay here, our college grads to come back here, families who are here having a harder time finding good paying jobs. What is it that you would like to do as a commissioner to encourage a more healthy economic and business climate for the county and her citizens who would like to have careers and lives here?
Well, I guess I have a couple parts to this answer. One is if I look back at the capital improvement plan and also know that I'm probably pro-growth, so we can increase our tax base in the county. And being pro-growth in the county, there's things that we've addressed in there. I can probably best tell you from the hospital standpoint, because that's where I see business. And I'll tell you also from the Rotary standpoint, because I interview the students that are looking for the Rotary scholarships, which are some of the brightest we have coming out of here. We're creating jobs at the hospital all the time that are well-paying jobs. Even our CNAs, we pay better than they do in Helena to attract good and keep good people, which is what we believe in. These young kids that I know when I interview them, they're full of great ideas and they want to do things, and I try to get them, because of the summer they're going to spend here, to come over and work in the hospital to help in physical therapy. Last year I think we had a physical therapist, a doctor, and 2 nurses that interviewed. And we need all those people here, so encouraging them to come here is one of the places that I'd like to help. Now, I don't know enough about this to talk about it, but as I said, I am pro-growth and we need diversity in our base here. I don't know what light industry we can attract. I don't know if we have that appetite to attract them, if we have to appeal with some of our tax breaks, but the county needs to grow, and I have questions for the city, because the city's kind of been dormant. The county's growing, certainly at both ends, and if the economy changes, I think we'll see that continue. The city is, I don't know what Mike Evans has in mind, but I'd like to know from him as well the same question. I danced around a little bit. I don't have a great answer for you other than where I'm involved. So.
I don't know that anybody's had a great answer on that one, because they're all in the same boat that you are, is how much of a force can the county be for growth without just, nobody wants to have county bankroll anything, we can't do that, so that's the question.
Sure, now, I guess I get a chance to keep talking if I want.
If you want to. This is like one of those debates where if we say something, you automatically get 30 more seconds.
Great. No, and we're not selecting the Supreme Court Justice here either, so you're ready.
As long as it doesn't turn into burning Hillary last night, it'll be fine. So.
No, we won't do that. I'm going to refer back to the capital improvement plan. I don't know if you're familiar with what it has to say, but if you just looked at the things it talks about for the hospital in there, that was 2011. They're out of date already. But at the same time, I can tell you the hospital was thinking, we need assisted living. We also now have somebody else coming to the county to build assisted living. The hospital's not sure if we need 2 or not, but those are jobs coming to this county, and it's appealing to a demographic that's growing in this county and how that will be done. So at the same time, that improvement plan talked about the senior center. Well, do we need maybe a new senior center that has larger meeting facilities? And if that was done, could it be done in conjunction with something else? A secondary assisted living. Certainly the hospital thinks the campus right across the street is an important place to put all that, and owns a couple pieces of that property. I don't, in full transparency from me, I think the next thing we need is a larger clinic, not on the 2nd floor of the hospital. But certainly on a board you have differences of opinion where you want to go. But that capital improvement plan talked about all these things, and I would tell you that's dated before anybody that's on the board today had anything to do with that. So there's ways to expand. It might be in services. I would certainly love to attract some light industry to the county if we could.
Anything that we've talked a lot about improving the commissioner operations. What do you see that the county commission is doing well now that you would like to continue or reinforce?
I think some of it is I've attended the meetings. I think some of the people who support the commissioners seem to be organized and well done. I mean, the other day when I saw Nicole Brown come in and the two commissioners were looking at a couple properties, and she went through that large list in an organized fashion and talked about, we gotta do this, and this. I think some of the things we do good are, some of our departments are run on small budgets and get by pretty well. At the same time, I think some of the things we do bad is we need to look at how we're getting things done and shuffle the deck. And I'll give you just, this is a tiny, you're gonna ask me next about what we do bad?
Yep, jump right in.
Okay, so.
Or we can improve.
What we can improve, you know, I'll give you a large one and a small one. I know we're looking at the search and rescue building, and I don't quite know where it stands since I've been in the meeting. I mean, Franklin, you actually quoted me what I'd said in the meeting, in the paper, when I said, search and rescue, and suddenly there's another one, and all these departments want in on it. Well, maybe we need to have an architect look at the whole thing. I certainly get design build construction where maybe we manage it on our own, but money is really cheap right now, so, and a lot of these departments have some money in pockets, so should we be looking at some form of construction in this county or not? And when we do that, and now the small thing, when I was leaving here the other day, downstairs, Mike was in the, what's the other fellow that works here? Eric, Crush and maintenance. They were down there in the hallway. One of them was holding a metal part and the other one was trying to saw it off. Don't we have at least a little shop these guys could use? Could they not go over to the, where they do the graders? I mean, so we have big and small things here. As I said, one of the first things I'd like to do is go to the different departments and say, you know, what's going on? What do you need? What's the issue? You know, when I asked you a question when we were down in Three Forks, that I don't know if you remember what it was, but I can remember Sheriff Brenda talking about, we attract these deputies, we equip these deputies, and then we don't pay them enough and they leave. Now I asked you about that and you said, well, it's getting better, I think, that's kind of the bottom line. You know, we don't do everything perfect, and why don't we? And then, and I haven't been a commissioner, I look at the two of you, now it comes to you and say, do we spend money on it or not? Do we ask those people, you know, could we improve our sheriff's department if we increased our mill levy? Or do we cut this out over here to make this work? Or do we go find a grant for it? You know, that's all part of that puzzle that's difficult. So there's things, to restate it, I think the people who work here, we have good people who care and are trying to do their job. And I've seen them do nice work at the commissioner meetings. And then we have people with a hacksaw and another guy holding it in the hallway. What's going on? So.
Well, it was Val's hacksaw, they had to borrow it, so.
And you had to get out of the car, right?
I did, I had to run home to Roy's and put it in the garage.
Don't go
Bring it
over,
over.
don't go over to the detention center with your hacksaw though.
That's
That
right.
probably won't go over
No,
well.
they won't let me in. They'll
Okay,
be
so
there.
You could hack all day long, you know?
Who wants to ask some more questions? There's a bunch more here. Somebody jump in.
Well, I know the first part, so I don't know what she has asked.
About doing, what is it, tell us about a mistake you made professionally or personally and how you fixed it and what you learned from it.
I made plenty of mistakes. What do I want to share? Work-wise ones, I'm probably try to follow the, and I think this is stolen from the Marines, know about 80% and then act. And sometimes I have put my foot in my mouth and had to go back to talk to people to say, I've screwed up. Now that's generic. Do you want a personal one from me as well, or is that good enough?
Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
I mean, that's probably, I'm more passionate about action than I am sometimes about knowing every detail. And, you know, I guess I'll put that into specific terms here. As far as the hospital goes, and sitting on the board, or just people there's a set of people in Broadwater County in general who want to be negative and tear this place down. And they print half-truths in the paper, and my first response is, that's not good. I normally try to not respond in the editorial page. I try to respond factual, because I think that the truth is a lot more important in facts to people than this emotional response. But I have in the past done an emotional response as well. And fortunately, I've had people coach me to say, don't send that.
We call those anger tickets.
Anger tickets. Well, I want to know you, but not about tickets.
Can you tell us about your proudest achievement?
Well, I'll tell you two. Is that okay? My proudest achievement is raising two boys that are good citizens. And raising children is not easy. But here in Broadwater County, I think my proudest achievement is what's happened in the hospital board. The hospital is closed, at least that's what everybody thinks in town, because the nursing home was closed. I live out Highway 12 towards White Sulphur. If I have a heart attack, I don't want to go to Helena. And so I decided I'm going to go down to the hospital board and see what's going on. Just like I've come to the commissioner meetings to sit and see what's going on. Well, that night Kevin Flynn resigns, and so he moves away from the table, and I get moved up to the table, okay? I've invested a lot of time to understand healthcare business. It's very complicated, and I am proud where that hospital has come from, because my second meeting as a hospital commissioner was to see if we were going to declare bankruptcy. That was the second meeting I went to, and obviously we didn't go there. It's not perfect, but it's come a long way from where they were, and decisions have had to be made that I'm sure as two commissioners you understand. People hammer you all the time about personnel, and you just can't talk about it. You can't. You would love to, but you just don't go there. So that would be, in Broadwater County, my best achievement is where that's come from.
Who's been a mentor or a shaping influence on you? Describe that person or more than one.
Well, the biggest mentor in my life is someone by his name is Jess Newbern. You wouldn't know him. I worked at the same place for 32 years for Train. He hired me. I was a graduate out of Michigan, and I was working in Wisconsin, and he said, come to Virginia and work in a little town called Roanoke. And I'm like, no way, I'm not going there. Well, I ended up working there 32 years. They've written a book about the culture called the ACBs of Cultureship, about that office. He taught me a lot about working with people. For example, I'll just give you one little taste. One of our mottos was straight talk with respect. So if I got mad at Franklin and didn't like what he was doing, the best thing I can do is go to Franklin respectfully and say, Franklin, do you need a computer from me? I'll be glad to help you if you need one. That culture changed me as a person through my life and how I work with people. And where you work, the culture is hugely important. So, Jess Newbern, I know you don't know him. I could say my dad, I could not, but.
Okay. So I guess that goes into the next one in terms of what would you say are qualities of a good leader and a bad leader, either in what you've seen in others, what you try to emulate in yourself?
Well, generally in my career I've been a player coach. I've tried not to be the manager, because working with people makes a big difference instead of telling people what to do. I believe that empowerment of the people you work with is hugely important. In other words, Laura, I expect you to do this, and I'll help you do it, but when you don't do it, you're going to disappoint me. Now, maybe that's the way mom and dad raised me, but at the same time, that's typically how I lead. I want to give people all the respect that they can do their job and help them do it. as opposed to tell, demand. That would probably be my biggest thing as a leader. As I mentioned earlier, I try to be organized. For example, coming to this meeting, I've taken a little time to think, what might you ask me? What do I want to make sure you know? The same is true of a commissioner meeting. And what I said about trying to help Franklin, I don't think of him as being a bad guy or a slow guy or a different party guy. I think you like to think about things. And if we could get you loaded so you had them all thought out before the meeting, because the commissioners are never going to agree, that's not your job. The commissioners are to have an open discussion and talk about what's going on. So that would be where I come from as a leader.
Anybody have any more they want to ask? We didn't ask all of them, but we wanted to, I think, give you a couple minutes at the end, it sounds like, to talk about some of the stuff that we may not have asked. So does anybody have any last questions?
I got one question. You said that I quoted you in the paper?
You did?
I quoted you?
You did. It was the night we talked about there was a second round of meetings about the search and rescue building.
Is that when we had the big crowd here?
Had a big crowd here. I sat over here that night, and I sent the two of you an email and asked you to forward it to the other commissioners. Then the paper came out with my exact words in it of that email attributed to you. So maybe you didn't mean to, but they attributed my words to you that day. Not that you said them, you quoted me as having said them.
I should only call it.
Why, good or bad? I mean, it doesn't bother me. You didn't.
Because I didn't write anything in the paper. I wrote anything in the paper for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, this was
Last fall.
6 months ago, maybe. It wasn't bad. I was surprised that. See, what happens at my house is my wife gets the paper and she goes, "You're in it again." And that was one of those days she says, "You're in it again," and I go, "What for?" So, and we can pull that out if you want to see it. It wasn't a bad thing. It's just the fact that I had said I thought that maybe we should have had an architect when we looked at that whole project because of all those things that came together is what I got quoted for. Does that help you? We can go back and look at it.
Yeah, I want to see that.
So does anybody have any more they want to ask? We have about 5 minutes left.
I think we've covered almost everything here.
I've got a couple questions, but I have one more area I'd like to talk about.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to talk about my experience a little bit, because we didn't go there. As far as governance goes, I've been the chair and on lots of boards in my career, and I've actually had some training in governance, mostly through the hospital, but fiduciary responsibility is you're on boards, what that means. From a business standpoint, I guess I would point you back to my resume instead of going through all that, but certainly personnel issues, reviews, raises, working with contracts, budgeting, those are all things I do and have had to do. My background is really construction in the state of Montana. We try to create large jobs that taxpayers don't have to pay for. We use energy savings to pay for the money borrowed to do the work. And that has brought me involved with the state quite a bit in different agencies. My degree is in civil engineering, so when I sit here and we talk about bridges and roads and surveys, those are things that basically I was trying to do in school. So, people in general, I hate to say it, I'm an extrovert, but that's had to live a life as I'm an introvert that's had to live as an extrovert. So, I'll go home and rest after this meeting, but at the same time, dealing with people, having to go work a room, so to speak. I was at Hometown Helena the other morning, and going around meeting people that were there, because I think ties and relationships are important to who we are. So I wanted to touch on my experience. If you can look at my resume and see other things. I have a couple questions though for you guys. I think you already answered this, so I might have to ask you another one. My question is, what's the largest problem I would face if I was appointed? And you said the conflict of interest with the hospital board. What else?
I would say that's the most immediate problem. I think the largest problem is our budget. That's my perception.
And on the budget, what kind of decisions would have to be made? Do we have to cut the
What's
budget?
your
or-
perception, Sheriff? My view is, I'll tell you my view, and I'm the new guy too, so, my view is that that to begin with, getting through last year's budget process, I was playing catch-up the whole time. Felt like there wasn't as much understanding through all the departments and as much, I had worked at the legislature for several years. So the budgeting process there is wide open. You can go get any report, any document, any amendment, any bill, any cost calculation, anytime. You just walk into an office and say, I want that, and have it given to you. I felt like here I had the hardest time actually getting current documents as to what stage we were at, what we were doing. Part of that was my own fault because of criminal caseload. I had limited amount of time to devote to it. But as far as the understanding the local government process, I've had a fair amount of frustration with it. And this year, my goal is to do more investment of time in it in order to get greater understanding. Having said all that, there was also a huge amount of argumentation and fighting and dispute last year between the sheriff's office and the commissioners over what was the actual state of the budget. I think now some of those chickens are coming home to roost, and I think that the sheriff's office budget is a little bit upside down in some areas, and we never got clarity and resolution on that through last year's fights, and I think those have to be resolved.
They don't go away. If you don't resolve them, they don't go away.
They don't go away. I think this next budgeting process is gonna be painful for all of us. Is that fair?
Well, I'm hoping to minimize that. One of the things that, and I did discuss with some of the people who were here after the last interviews is the budget when Sheriff Thompson was here was there was more line items, there was more areas. And in the tenure of Sheriff Ludwig, she consolidated things, make anything part of it, make it easier. I wanna know where every dollar's spent. I wanna know exactly if I'm spending this much here, if I'm spending it in shipping, if I'm spending it in clothing, or whatever. I wanna know exactly where everything's at. So, like I discussed with these folks already, is that my intentions are next month is to sit down with my command staff and my finance officer and say, okay, what are we looking at? And then get our line items that we need in these areas and then set forth from there. Because by the end of May, I wanna have a very solid idea of what I'm gonna need in a budget.
When are budgets due from the departments?
In June.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
like-
July 1st is that's our beginning of our new fiscal year. But usually we start them in April.
So I guess my next question is for each of you. I was gonna ask you what you thought your biggest problems are, but I'll just ask you about the budget. What's gonna happen? Where do you guys stand on this? So everybody comes back and says, we want a bigger budget. What do you do? How do you two work together on that?
Well, they're gonna have to, one thing, prove if they need extra. That's the first thing. And then it depends, there might be cuts. I'm not saying
Improve,
which department.
is there some measurements that you're
Well-
having to improve to?
Well, I'll use this, and just because I did this last year, is I pulled 3 years. And I went through everything to figure out what the average was. And that was, part of the argument last year was, why, this is what we're averaging, and I'll use operations. When you spend $141,000 and change for 3 years in a row, why are we asking for $205,000? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
I'm not trying to overinflate my budget so I have money at the end of the year.
Well, that's a good example. Don't tell me the other way, though. That's a scary example.
I want to make sure that I have the money to cover what I have.
Right.
And so, and I think part of that with not knowing exactly where, when you're taking things at operations that should be somewhere else because you don't have a line item for it, I think you're really giving a misfigure towards it. I want to be able to, at the end of this year, look at the budget and say, okay, we're right on task on where we need to be. Everything that we have that's mandated by state or federal law that has to be done, such as continuing education and trainings and ethics and all that other stuff. All that has a cost to it, and we understand that. But we have a union agreement that we have to compete with, and so as long as everything is being met, I think my goal is by the 16-17 fiscal year, I'm gonna have a very good understanding of what that building and everything in it costs, to a more precise.
To Corey's point, he's new, I know you're new in the job too, it just takes a while. Do we do some budget training?
We have,
Yeah.
And I'd like to add a little bit of this. We did have budget training. We do continual budget training conferences, new elected officials training. There's periodic trainings. But one of the things that we did a couple of years ago, and it's streamlined the budget process. We went through a 3-year process starting about 2010, 2011. We almost lost the detention center. Same story as the hospital. We had to rebuild it, we had to infuse it with money, and then after that, what we did is we went through a process of setting mills. So now the budget is set by mills. We have a finite number of mills, we can't go up or down on that. So each department has their number of mills, and that determines their revenue, and we've told the department heads, build your expenses around your revenue. If you want more revenue, there are grants, there are other options. If the valuation goes up, you have a little bit more money. If it goes down, we're all in the same boat, you better tighten your belt. So that becomes very difficult when somebody does want more money for their budget, because it really is on them.
The county shared with me how the levies worked, and so I was looking at that, trying to understand what you've done is you've broken down the general levy into the pieces and said, here's your piece, Lynn, and if you have to change it, find it somewhere else, I guess.
And certainly, every few years, we should be readdressing that and reshuffling those mills too. And we're about there. So, depending on which new commissioner we have, does it happen this year, next year, and the year after that?
Right, and to my point about some growth in the county to expand the tax base, so if we can expand the tax base, we'll have more money to keep up with the growth in the different departments.
and unfortunately, I have the worst budget for that, because when you look at search and rescue, you look at in 2015, didn't have a lot of calls for service for search and rescue. 2014, I was chasing my tail the whole time. I mean, I had calls coming out of the wazoo. And so then I got all the equipment to do the rescues and recoveries that I needed to do, and then, so I have all the equipment and hardly had any calls. But then on the other aspect is 14 wasn't so bad in the law enforcement aspect, 15 kicked us in the tail.
Well, if I understood numbers right, I think I heard you say the other day, we're getting $65 a day for people to come in. Fergus County's getting 58. I asked them, because I heard you say that, and I met your counterpart over there, so whatever you've done there, you've done right.
Well, that's actually a DOC evaluation process where you have to determine what it costs with your staff and energy and all that to try to determine what your bed rate is, but now they've gone to a different thing where they only pay like $67 regardless. So, the detention center, we had a pretty high expected revenue. We pushed the envelope as hard as we could, and we've dang near met that expectation of that revenue. But it's also taxed the budget a little bit harder than what it was designed for. So, and I've been very upfront with the commission about that. So, ours is unfortunately, our environment's a living area that you can't really concrete it down. And with everything the federal government says or the state government says, it definitely changes our game as well. So,
I had some more questions, but my time is up. I would tell you though, since I know you have to use this as my clock, that I do carry my phone with me 24/7. So emails, texts, phone calls, it's just the way I've lived in the job I've been in. So I thank you for your time, unless you have any more questions for me. I'm a few minutes over.
Appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for applying.
No donut?
You
Yes.
can
There you go.
yourself.
Right there.
might have to break open the other box.
No.
There's
this
a
is
couple
a
of
flyer
them.
for Monday night. You'll
Great.
start with a 3-minute introductory speech. Mayor Mike Evans is the moderator,
All right.
and that's just kind of a structure of what it'll look like.
Great. Can't wait for that too.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. And I'm going to the game, so I'll cheer for him. Even though I'm not
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
All right, go Bulldogs.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Phil.